Welcome to the RICO 12 speaker meeting. My name is Justin, and I am an addict. And thanks to my God, the steps, and the fellowship of other addicts, I'm sober one day at a time since June 19th, 2015. And for that, I am beyond grateful. Welcome once again to the RICO 12 speaker meeting. We are an organization whose addictions include alcohol, drugs, lust, and sex, food, and gambling, just to name a few. We come together from all places, faiths, and backgrounds to learn the similarities of addiction and to gain tools and hope from others who are walking a similar path. We invite recovering addicts with at least 1 year sobriety and who are actively working their recovery in their respective fellowships to share their experience, strength, and hope on a live Zoom webinar each Friday at noon Central Time for 20 to 25 minutes. Then we, the live audience, get the opportunity to ask questions of the speaker for another 20 to 25 minutes. If you're hearing this meeting in recorded podcast form and would like to participate as a live audience member in the future, please go to www.rico12.com to learn more and to submit your email address there to receive weekly invitations. That's RECO12.com, like recovery, 12-step, rico12.com. RICO 12 is a self-supporting service, and we appreciate your help in keeping us in working our 12th step in this manner. We gratefully accept contributions to help cover the cost of the Zoom platform, podcast platform, web hosting, and administrative costs. To contribute, you can go to rico12.com/support, or you can click the link to PayPal that will be in the live chat of the live meeting or in the show notes of the podcast. When you contribute, please specify the meeting number. This is meeting number 47. Now, a little bit behind the scenes here. I sent out a notice in error, so we're starting this meeting an hour later than typical and an hour earlier than what was expected by our guest speaker, Leila, and she's been very gracious to work with us to make sure that we get this recorded today, and I'm very grateful for that. Now, last week's meeting was with Faith A and was really a fantastic meeting on finding peace in all of the different phases of recovery and life. If you missed hearing that very powerful meeting or any other meeting we've done, you can listen to them in podcast form by searching for RICO 12 Speaker Meeting Podcast on any podcast platform that you use, or you can go to RICO 12 website and find it under the link podcast. All right. One more word about our speakers before we introduce today's speaker. When we line up a speaker for a meeting, we ask them to seek guidance and what and how to present so that they can reflect the light they have been given. That light will then inspire hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now, before we introduce our guest speaker for today, Leila, let's do the set-aside prayer to get us started here. And I'll go. And Leila, if you wouldn't mind saying, actually, I'm going to say that. All right. Dear God, please set aside anything we think we know about ourselves, about our disease, about the Big Book, the 12 steps, the program, the fellowship, the people in the fellowship, and all spiritual terms, especially you, God, so that we may have an open mind and a new experience with all of these things. Please help us to see the truth. Amen. All right. Thank you. And I'm going to read Leila's bio here real quick and then turn the floor over to her. Leila is gratefully thriving and prospering in all of her fellowships. It is through rigorously working the 12 steps that she has found peace, serenity, and joy in her life today. The 12 steps have given Leila the community, solution, and recipe for living that she never knew she always needed. She has started 2 SLAA meetings, which combined have over 300 joining participants every week, and that's awesome. She is passionate about being of service and works this program as seriously as she worked her addictions. Leila, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Justin, and thanks for that flexibility. Have to be flexible. That's something I'm learning in this too. And so I think while I was going to start somewhere else, I'll start by saying that when the time that everyone else thought this meeting was happening, I was preparing myself, running in the heat in the mountains, trying to get my body moving and trying to get my mind clear and trying to connect with my higher power. And all the while, I'm like, why are so many fellows calling me right now? I don't have reception. I can't pick up the phone. I'm doing this thing. And that's one thing I will say is really cool about what this program also is, aside from a recipe for living. It's if you put yourself out there and you connect with people and you get to know people, people have your back. And that's something that an addict like me, who is afraid of everyone and everything, who does not trust anyone or anything, it's been like a beautiful lesson and part of what's like restoring me to sanity. So I have a new director. This podcast had a new director today. For some reason today, God said the podcast is at 11 PST and not whatever the other time was. So I'm going to get started. I'm Leila. I'm a sex and love addict. I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. Probably some other things in there too. But right now, those are the fellowships I'm most strongly connected with. I came into these rooms on the Zoom. I had never been to an in-person meeting before. And when I was faced with the dilemma of my life becoming truly unmanageable, it was beyond unmanageable. I said, well, this is the only thing I haven't tried. And this addiction, my addictive mind, the ism, is so powerful, cunning, powerful, baffling. But it's so much so that it tried to take my life. And that's the reality of it, is that, Mark H. and all these great speakers talk about how we've got all these voices in our head, and this one tells you to do this and that one tells you to do that. But the problem is, eventually there's one left. And if the one that's left is the addict, you're kind of shit out of luck. I'm sorry for swearing. I hope that's okay. So that was what happened to me. I was left with one voice, and that voice told me, there's nothing worth living for. You're done. You're out. We're done. And by the grace of God, the last thing I said before any of that took place is, please, someone help me. I'm not qualified to run my life. Was I calling God in? Was God there the whole time? I don't know. Not for me to know. But what I do know, and I'm going to take us to the Big Book, because this Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous is what I do all of the work in my fellowships through. And on page 25, it is what it was like before, right? So I had two choices. Continue blotting out the consciousness of my existence. But, drugs stopped working. People, places, things, money, alcohol, all of it stopped working. And what do you do when all of your coping mechanisms and the tools that you've used to numb out, to avoid pain, and in my case, to chase myself away from myself, stop working? For me, I thought I'd gone mentally insane. Like I was either put me in an institution, put me in prison, or I can't be here anymore, because I couldn't live with what was happening in my head. So two choices: continue blotting it out. That wasn't a choice for me anymore. So I had to accept spiritual help. And this book is so interesting. Every time I read it, I get something different as my program progresses. And the first thing I had to understand was that I had been playing God in my life. I had been the manipulator, the perpetrator, the objectifier. I had arranged everything. And for the most part, until things did go my way. I got everything I wanted. Didn't always do it in like the best ways, but I was a really good manipulator, and I was really good at lying to myself, and I was really good at lying to everyone else. And so playing God was another way. It's like use substances and people, and then in combination with God equals this is how we live life. And so page 60 says the first requirement is that we be convinced any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. I had to really believe that. And I did. I had desperation when I came into these rooms. I had anonymity like to the 10th degree, because I didn't have to walk into a physical room. the pandemic saved my life in that way, although it's been a tragedy in many others. I would have never walked into a sex and love addicts meeting someplace in a city. That wasn't ever going to happen. Mostly because I was just so ashamed to look at other people who were like me. And I was also afraid that those people were going to tell me I was too bad to belong there. So turning my will and my life over was easy because then at that point, at my most desperate, it was easy because I had no more life. I had blown up every relationship, my 10-year relationship, the person I was having an affair with in that relationship. Again, all of the drugs, I took them self-directed, shamanistic, acid trips, moving. Again, I tried all of it. So my will gone. Lack of power was my dilemma. I had to surrender. And it was easy then. As I progress in my recovery, it becomes more and more challenging to let go and turn over, because the things we're turning over are these like smaller, kind of more subtle things that grow, right? So the part of turning things over, I think, like that I'd like to talk about is just that, came to believe that a power greater than myself, came to believe it's a process, not an event. I don't need to know what my God is yet. I just have to know it can't be me. It can't be my boyfriend. It can't be my mom. It can't be my trauma. It can't be the meetings. It can't be my sponsor. It just has to be something other than people, places, or things in the very material, tangible sense. Each person is like the actor, so on page 60, who wants to run the whole show, forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, the rest of the players in their own way. If the arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Well, I'm a filmmaker. I'm a film editor. My job that I was drawn to most is to take something that's filmed of reality and chop it up and move pieces around to make a narrative that I think is more compelling. And I made a pretty successful career out of it. And so, again, this was just how I knew how to live. I don't think it's that important to go into family of origin stuff. It was unstable. I didn't get the tools I needed. I don't have the neural pathways wired correctly to know how to deal with situations that might be quite simple for other people. I am powerless over fear. And I'm codependent on fear too. So the opposite of fear is faith. And the two cannot exist in the same moment. And when I'm in fear, I'm playing God. That's it. I'm deciding. When I'm in fear of anything, I've created an outcome because of my fear of the unknown and what might be. But the thing what I've learned in recovery is that even my recovered vision for myself for the future is so myopic and tiny and scarce that even when I think I'm like attract the abundance, my concept of abundance is not one of abundance, and so I can't tell the true from the false. I don't know how to even do that, so I have to turn it over to God, because what God has for me is something beyond my wildest dreams. And I got to get out of the way. I stand in the way of my relationship with a higher power. It's always me. It's always going to be me. So my family of origin, made things a little bit harder, but I don't, thankfully, as a result of working these steps, I don't have to blame those things and those people anymore for what kind of effect that had on me. So knowing that selfishness, self-centeredness, fear, self-delusion, self-pity, humility masked, really martyrdom masked as like genuine humility, codependency, caretaking, and assigning people magical qualities, assigning places magical qualities. If I move to this place, my life will be this. If I change my sexuality, my life will be better. If I eat a keto diet, if I become a monk, like I was always just looking for what was gonna be the thing that made me feel okay, like I could do this. And until I got into this program, it was nothing. I'm 35 years old and I've been in therapy since I was 15 and I've done a lot of stuff. And so if it can work for me, it can work for you. Page 50 or page 62. This is the how and the why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, and it was a drama and it continues to be a drama, but it's not mine anymore to continue to catastrophize. God was going to be the director. God is the principal. I am its agent. God is a father. I am his child. Most good ideas are simple, and it's the keystone to the triumphant arc through which we pass to freedom. Any moment that I start playing God, my life immediately I feel restless, irritable, discontent, confused, afraid. The moment I pick up my will and I forget that I've made a third step promise, like I made a promise to myself. And also in this book, I said that I would go to any lengths to recover. Any lengths to recover. And that means I have to rigorously look at my ability to be honest with myself. My ability to say, like, am I being pure, kind, honest, faithful, whatever, the four absolutes, right? Are all of my motives, what are my motivations for things? Because if I start to put money ahead, my fear of money ahead of my recovery, I'm losing emotional sobriety by the second. And that's just like I lose until I've lost it all again. And I'll be right back down the ladder. So it's a daily reprieve, right? And I think that it's just like anything else, playing the piano, right? I was the person who didn't play the piano because I hated that when I sat down to play it the first time, I wasn't good at it. I didn't like that when I sat down to hear God didn't speak to me the way I wanted it to. But I was desperate and I wanted this. How bad do you want it? Because I wanted it so bad that I lay on my bed every night and I just talked to the ceiling. In the beginning, I talked for like 3 hours to the ceiling. And eventually, not in the way that I believe, like that I think it should happen, God speaks to me. I can't explain it. Had no conception of God before. I'm not a religious person, and this is not a religious program. It's a spiritual one. God does not test me. My God is not one of testing. There are always going to be challenges that arise. When troubles arise, we capitalize, cheerfully capitalize on them. Not if, when. Because God is not in the problem. God is in the solution. When I am in the problem that is life, I have to decide, do I blot out or do I choose God? Do I get into self-pity and sit and mull and dwell and get so deep inside of the bondage of self that I then again within an hour am having suicidal ideation? That's who I am. That's who I am if I'm not doing this. And so I have people in this program, a fellowship in this program, a community of people who have seen me on this journey, who can remind me, because I have amnesia, who can remind me that I have been happy, joyous, and free. I have experienced the promises of this program. And another thing I want to say, the program, I said this yesterday in a lead I gave, like, I can't think of this as a program. This is now my life. It has to be as integrated into my life, I hope, one day, as the way I breathe, I blink, I eat, I drink, like whatever. I have to be able to integrate it so it's seamless. How are we doing on time, Justin?
You're fine on time. If you want to go for another 10 minutes, you can. If you want to wrap it up, you can. Whatever feels good to you.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. I'll go for a little longer. So I need God's help. And it's baffling to me sometimes why I still put my character defects ahead of my recovery. That also reveals more character defects: arrogance, ungratefulness, intolerance. When I came in here and I said, I'll do anything, I have to remember that that means anything. I can't forget that as I recover, I feel better. So I don't think I'm as close to where I was when I came in here, but I am closer to death now than I am then, because now I know the solution and we get worse, never better. And my addiction is happening. As I talk to you now, it's still here and it's never going to really be gone. But God, higher power, can be the vessel that like contains all of those fears that like really like cut me off from others, from myself, from my family, from being able to have relationships, being intimate, being vulnerable, and all of that. So I do need God's help. And some days I'm too stubborn to admit that. Some days my ego is too big. Some days I really want to think that I can do it myself. And when I ask my sponsor, what is wrong with me? Why do I think I can do it myself? Well, I've been doing it myself since I was 5 years old. Of course, that's why. Like, I looked up at my parents one day when I was 5 and I was like, oh, cool, got it. I got to do this myself. That's it. And I have been ever since. And so old habits die hard. 34 years of running the show and playing God and destroying people's lives, mind you, in the process, not just my own life, really destroying and hurting other people. That's going to take some time for me to forgive myself from. But the thing is God forgives me. So what am I waiting on, right? To move on from. God says you're allowed to move on. And I sit here and I hold those resentments towards myself. I am even playing God it's like, I almost think I am a God when I'm in my defects. I'm like a God talking to God. I have to humble myself. I have to get to the level, get it right size, get myself right sized. And that was a challenging thing for me too, because I have a huge ego and I have no self-esteem, which I think a lot of addicts feel that way. A lot of ego, crippling low self-esteem. And that causes a really strange thing in the brain as well. So what I've also come to know is that like worrying is like praying for all the things you don't want to happen. It's literally, it's whatever you think about most. My sponsor says this, whatever you think about most during the day is your higher power. And when I'm in self, and I'm self-pitying, when I'm not helping others, when I'm not working this program, I'm God again. And it can happen in a split second. And I guess just because I love to hear from other people, just to wrap it up, I think that there are a lot of ways to do recovery. There's this like, the progress, not perfection thing, and take what you like and leave the rest. All these sorts of sayings. I mean, progress, not perfection is the most popular one. But I aim for perfection, not because I think I can get it. I used to think I could, but because I want the progress that's aimed at that type of perfection. And I will fail, and I have no delusion about that. My perfectionism is another form of playing God, and it's another form of my ego destroying me. So I don't know where I was going with that, but there was something about it. My shares lately have been a little different, and I like it because I think it means I'm being more honest than I've been before. But the tools of this program have taught me how to live, like my little bio says. Every answer is in this book. Acceptance is the answer to a lot of problems. When I came in here, everything was terrible. And everyone was doing, everything that was happening was being done to me, about me, because of me, I, my, and it's exhausting. But I can slip right back in there. Like, I can easily, it's a very comfortable place for me. As one of my fellows says, my pain body, my trauma body is used to feeling horrible about myself, feeling horrible about my choices, regretting the past, tripping on the future, never being in the present moment, never mindfully being grateful for what I have. So I have to remember that I rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path, not half measured the path. Because when I half measure it, I feel it viscerally in my body to the point where it's like a new pair of glasses. I have one and I can't take them off now because I've seen that this works. And I guess just to conclude, right? God is everything or God is nothing. I personally was, as someone who came from studying existentialism and, God is dead, we killed him. And I was like, what do you mean? God is everything, God isn't. God is dead. Actually, no. It's like we can kill God. I did by playing God, right? But God's like still always there. I can't escape it. And I now understand what it means God is everything or God is nothing. It's like, it's the same thing as fear and faith cannot exist in the same space. God cannot not be and be at the same time. So I have to remember that my fears are normal. They're going to be ups and downs. I'm going to have to feel things for the first time in my life. I'm going to have to not avoid and chase myself and others away. I'm going to have real conversations with people. I'm going to have to help others expecting nothing in return. And I'm going to have belief in myself that I can do it. That's faith. And I'm trying really hard every day. I am grateful to these rooms, to Zoom, to the 12 steps. Like really, I feel like I'm going to cry because I'm like really grateful. Because I really didn't think that I would be alive today. So, in closing, please don't be afraid of the God thing. There's a whole chapter in there. It's whatever you want it to be. My God used to be David Bowie. That's who I talked to when I was laying in my bed. It can be whatever you want it to be. Don't like the trees quote, don't miss the beauty of the forest because of some of the ugliness of its trees, right? Intolerance, just give it a try. Just try it. Because my life has improved immeasurably as a result of working these programs. And I'm just really grateful to be here. And now that my tears will be commemorated on recording forever. So that now I just got nervous. But thank you so much, Justin, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome, Leila. I really appreciate your tears, and they won't be commemorated for nothing. People will gain motivation through those. Thank you for being willing to share those things. Before we turn the time over for some question and answer, and a reminder to our live audience, if you have questions for Leila, please type them in the Q&A link there at the bottom of your Zoom window. It looks like two speech bubbles over the top of each other. But before we get to that, Leila, would you mind taking 30 to 60 seconds and just sharing a little bit about the primary fellowship you belong to and how that helps you in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, so I came into the rooms of SLAA, the sort of regular SLAA rooms, and immediately they were like, start writing essays about all the things that you did in your life. And I was like, I can't do that. I'm going to die if I do that. And I very luckily heard someone from the Toronto Big Book meeting fellowship speak at a meeting. I heard God through them. And I started going to those meetings. And so my first sponsor was in Canada. My home group is in Canada. My family is there now. And I didn't really trust anyone. Like I didn't think I was like, I'll do all the other stuff, but I won't do the fellowship part. The fellowship, not for me. But it's hugely important. I've grown exponentially as a result of the experience, strength, and hope, not only of sponsees and and friends and people these people in recovery, but I feel unconditional love in a way where I don't have to be anything but just me. I can be me and they still accept me. And that's a lot. It's like a lot for me. So come check out our meetings. I'm sure you've heard Nikki and Kimmy, everyone's probably come on here. We're all part of that family. And yeah, I don't know if that answered the question.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we have had a large contingent of SLAA speakers from Toronto. It's been quite the by far the largest represented number of speakers from that fellowship. So you guys are doing something special and amazing there. That's awesome. All right, we've got a few questions that have come in, and I'll get to those here. First question is from Kimia. I think that's how you pronounce that. I apologize if I pronounce that wrong. She says, thank you, Leila, for your message of hope and faith. You have humanized recovery and your growth is inspiring. Can you please tell us more about your daily spiritual regimen and what has been working for you? What is your message to the newcomer?
Thanks, Kimia. Love you. Daily spiritual regimen. On the best day, and by best, I don't mean the day that I do it best. I mean the day that I feel most connected to God, my fellows in the program. I wake up and I immediately talk to God. I do my 3rd step prayer. I list 5 gratitudes immediately, and move my body, drink some water, meditate, even if it's for a minute. Meditate. It gets easier. It's like the piano thing. And also, call a fellow, call a newcomer, call somebody. I usually try and get someone, go onto a meeting, someone's brand new and they're in a lot of pain. I try to get their number specifically and I give them a call because that's what people did for me. And for the newcomer, there's a solution if you want it. It works if you work it. How bad do you want it? How bad do you need it? And are you willing to go to any length? There's like so much here. It's overwhelming perhaps, but I promise you that it's not more work than, for me at least, it wasn't more work than keeping up the charade that was my life. And and I think also one more thing, daily spiritual regimen. As I recover, I have to grow my God. So sometimes the regimen that I'm doing isn't enough. I've turned a corner. I'm turning a corner, right? And so now my spiritual practice has to grow and I have to shift it. And whenever I feel like I can't find it, can't access it, nature is always really good. Just sitting in nature, sitting in silence. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leila. All right. We've got another question that came in from Janie. Janie says, Leila, how do you enjoy God's gifts, the stream of life, outside of actual recovery 12-step work? Is there a sweet spot where Leila gets to be Leila, yet not selfish? Self-fulfilled, yet not selfish? How is this integrated in your life on a practical basis?
Ooh, Janie B, come with that fire question. Okay, so I think that's something I'm going to start to learn. Being somebody who did all this in a pandemic, I think my first 90 days I did 600 meetings. I just stayed on Zoom all day, all night, Cocaine Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, whatever I could do. Just kept a Zoom on. And so my recovery is very much in a bubble. And it's very much like I want to protect it. Here comes the fear again, right? I want to protect it because I don't want the world to take it from me, where it's like, nobody can take this from me. And I actually deserve those gifts, right? So the way that I get to be me is, for the most obvious one was me just crying earlier, because that's like me recognizing and accepting that I am allowed to be me. And maybe I hadn't even accepted that yet until this moment. I still think I'm trying to be the best version of Leila who's in a 12-step fellowship. But I am all of it. God is inside of me. God is outside of me. God is in you. And I am who I am. And I'm perfect and whole, right? So how it's integrated into my life, I would say the most obvious way, I'm an artist. I stopped doing filmmaking for a few months and I started to make music. And I felt inspired for the first time. I felt like happy and proud of like creating something with myself and not being judgmental and critical of it. And so I think in my creative practice, it's come across the most clearly. But I think I love that question because I actually need to think about that more. Janie B. I love it though. You're like spot on. Janie B sees it's true. So more on that later, Janie B.
Awesome. Thank you for starting to walk down that path with us. It makes me think also about those same questions. Thank you. All right. Another question from our live audience. Monroe says or asks, what is your understanding of the definition of love and forgiveness?
Yeah. So love and forgiveness, first and foremost, must be aimed towards myself. Now, that's a big one, right? But I can't give something I don't have. So I can forgive this person in my life who's done, who has harmed me. I can forgive in theory, but I have to forgive and love myself. And I have to find ways that I can love myself because that will grow just like my faith. So love and forgiveness for me begins in me. And as I have a little bit more love and forgiveness for myself, all of a sudden a resentment that I felt like was never going to lift starts to lift. And I start to understand that those who wronged us might too, were probably like spiritually sick, right? And that I am not alone or unique in this. And that if what I want is love, tolerance, forgiveness, genuinely, if that's what I want, I have to be it and try to give it and transmit it the best that I can. But I tried before, like I tried in the middle of, I would say 4 months in, I tried to fake self-love. And it was very evident that I couldn't do it because I was becoming incredibly judgmental, intolerant, and hateful of everyone I saw in these meetings, of everything I heard. I was pretending. And so once I let myself off the hook and really found the things about myself that are lovable and worthy of love, I can forgive myself for the decisions I made in the past because I didn't know any better. And that's the truth. It'd be a lie if I said I knew better and I made those decisions because I wanted those outcomes. No, I made those decisions because I was paralyzed by 100 forms of fear. So who doesn't want to forgive somebody who didn't, had no idea what they were doing? I was a chicken with my head cut off. I have to forgive myself. Yeah. And then I get to forgive others. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much, Leila. All right. Another question from the live audience. This is from CM. Thank you so much for your share, Leila. Every time I hear you speak, I'm inspired. In awe, really. I've learned so many things from you. I hear you speak about higher power. I'm willing, so willing. I pray and pray. Logically, I believe in my higher power. It's my connection that needs work. I want to feel God. How did you do it?
Thank you, first of all, for those kind words. Very, very nice to know that that's how I can also love myself, is when I hear people say that like I've helped them a little bit, because that, again, was something that felt impossible. I had nothing to give in my mind. So thank you for that and for sharing that love. I appreciate it. Yeah, so in the Big Book, we got Bill's story, right? The war and the cathedral and November and the drink and the tremens and the stock market. And it's like on and on. It's like, Bill, can you just please get it together? And the spiritual experience is a tiny paragraph. It's like this big, barely any words. It's not, it's otherworldly. It's not of this. Whenever I heard this the other night on a meeting, whenever I try to understand what my higher power is, I shrink it to a human form, and then I start to engage with it in a humble way. I cannot understand it. That's okay. I have to first be okay that I do not understand how this works or why it works. 2, God, higher power, nature, spirit of the universe, great reality, does not make too harsh of terms for those who earnestly seek. And I understand that you're willing, I hear that, and that you want it. But remember, we have to drop the expectation, because you want it, but maybe somewhere in your head, you want it, you expect it to sound a certain way. You expect it to tell you certain things. You want it to be more overwhelming than it is. You want it to be, in the breeze. That's the set aside prayer, right? That Justin read at the beginning. Set aside, help me to set aside everything I think I know. My higher powers eventually started talking to me in a weird way. I can't explain it. But then after 3 months, didn't talk to me anymore. And I only heard my higher power through fellows. Only. And I had to accept that. I had to release my expectation. I had to stop playing God and let God be God and let me just trust that I'm where I'm supposed to be. So I'll go back to the piano analogy. If you can get on the piano right now, so long as you're not a piano virtuoso, and you can play Chopin, you probably don't need this program, but I'm pretty sure it's just about practice, just like anything else. Just practice, silence, for me, I removed every single possible distraction that there was in my life. For 90 days, I spoke only to my sponsor and God. Cut out my family, friends, loved ones, ex-boyfriends, no social media, no work, cut everything out because I needed to hear God. Maybe there's things you have to cut out. I don't know. It's different for everybody though. And no 2 experiences are the same, but it is there. And I would just suggest dropping your expectation of what it is.
Love that. Expectations, and my wife taught me this, and I'm sure many people have heard it all over the place in different ways, but expectations to me, whether it's how I expect to hear God's voice or the outcome of anything, expectations are nothing more than predetermined resentments. And that's a real truth that has brought me a lot of peace, to let down my expectations and say, you know what, I don't need to expect this grand, whatever it be, the voice of God to be this big booming thunder or whatever, it's good stuff. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, and also, if I can just add also, sometimes expectation is also an attachment. It's an attachment to the outcome. An attachment is the root of suffering. Who am I to attach myself to the idea that God speaks to me, higher power speaks to me in a certain way? I can't. I have to know that this is going to be uncomfortable and it's going to be a little bit weird. But yeah, the expectations, they definitely cause resentment, and they definitely attach us to realities that are not even happening. So
awesome. A reminder, we have another couple of questions here. If you have a question, please type it in the Q&A link at the bottom of the window there, and we'll get to those. Next question is from an anonymous attendee. The anonymous attendee says, what do you say to atheists who struggle with the concept of belief? I think that's a great question.
Yeah. So I think that I wouldn't say I was an atheist when I came in here, but there was definitely no sense of there being any. I was more of an atheist than an agnostic, I'll put it that way. I thought and that was from a resentment. I thought, where have you been, God? Where are you in Yemen with the starving people? Where are you in this place with the tragedy? Again, why I said before, God is in the solution, not in the problem. I condemned it. And I also thought that believing in God was anti-intellectual, and that it was plebeian, and that it was what people Marx said it, religion, the opiate of the masses. But again, this isn't religion. And so I think even using the word atheist, you're taking a word that is in a Judeo-Christian context of what you don't believe in. Cool. We're not asking you actually to believe in anything to do with Jesus or any of these people, any of these religions. We're saying spiritual. I've had a friend who was an atheist watch his wife's baby being born and said it was a spiritual experience and he now believes in something. We are a miracle. Like, this is a spiritual experience. Like, we're sitting on us with these, like, everything is so hyper spiritual that I think to deny the reality of, like, deep down within every man, woman, and child, right? The book says there is a concept of God. There is. And some say that, like, it's our thrownness, detachment, fellow was telling me about this, from God, which creates this, like, lifetime of searching, of seeking, of pain. We're trying to reconnect. So I would say, like, look into what are your real, like, what are you holding on to there? Like, I think that's the thing I would ask for. Like, I would ask the most to yourself, like, what are you having to protect this atheism? What are the stakes? And, I've had sponsees who I found out after weeks and weeks of being like, what is the issue? Like, let's get to the issue. Their parents were atheists and they didn't want their parents to think that they were now, like, Jesus freaks. And again, there's nothing about that in this book. It's nothing about it at all. So I have a friend who is an atheist and he's 3 years in this program, and the group of drunks, group of drunks, the group conscience is his higher power. It's just a higher power. Because I think, like, atheism, like, not trying to be too judgmental, but, like, really it's just another way of playing God. It's saying there is nothing and I know it. Like, I don't know anything. I know that.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I had never conceptualized that atheism is another way of playing God myself, And once again, I don't say that in a judgmental way, like what you said. It's just a new concept to me to think about. I have another question. If there's any other questions, please type them in here. Mine goes back to something you shared, Leila, when you were talking about faith and fear. You said something to the effect of, and I tried to write it down word for word. I know I messed it up. Worrying is like praying for things that I don't want to have happen. Can you dig a little bit deeper into that and what that means? It kind of, my brain's still swimming around it and wanting to grasp it.
Yeah. So steps 10 and 11, right? Sought through prayer, 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact, right? That's 10. Getting them switched up. Anyway, part of this program is prayer where we talk to God, meditation where we listen. When I worry and I cut God out of it, when I don't invite God into my worry, all of a sudden I'm worshiping and making that worry my higher power. And I am unable to accept anything. I am beyond, again, I get beyond human aid. I can't hear solution. I can't hear truth. I've now not been able to figure out the true from the false. So when it goes back to also that thing, what I think about most in the day is my higher power. So if my fear, myself, like my poor me, that's just going to be that is my higher power for the day. And I get to choose. So at the end of the day, in my inventory, my nightly inventory, was I thinking about me most of the day, or others, or things, objects, or was I thinking about God? Because I have to invite God into every single thing. So like, I think that's all I mean by worrying is like praying for the things you don't want to happen. You're using that mental energy to numb out and create that kind of disconnect, at least for me. I don't even believe in like new agey manifestation stuff either. I'm just saying that like it's physiological, like we are bodies of water in us. And negativity on a quantum physics level, negative thoughts do affect us on a physiological level. So yeah, I mean, I just think that what am I sitting thinking about all the things I don't want to happen because I'm fearful, because I'm selfish, because I'm self-seeking, because I also kind of secretly want them to happen so that I know that they're going to happen and then I can be in control. So my worry is just like a control mechanism. It's a fear tactic. It's like a defense mechanism so that I can prepare for every worst case scenario. So I try very hard not to do that. I don't succeed all the time, but I try to remember that I want to pray just to invite God into my problem that I'm having in that moment and ask God to remove it, or ask God to help me see the solution, not to just sit in the worry or the fear.
Awesome. And something you said there just went right to the source for me also. You said, if I'm sitting around thinking about poor me all day, I'm making poor me my higher power. And then when I thought that, I thought, well, what kind of higher power is poor me? Not strong enough to deliver me from anything. And what a beautiful concept there. Thank you for sharing that in that way. It opened my eyes to a lot of things. Before we close up, Leila, do you have any final parting words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I just want to express my gratitude for my fellows and the people that I walk on this path with, and thank them for coming here and supporting me, and even with the time change. And I want to read, what I think is maybe one of the nicest little bits of the book. This book is only meant to be suggestive. We only know a little. And I want to say that. I know very little. But in 9 months, I've learned more than I learned in all of the moments and years and times that I was trying to control my life. And higher power will constantly disclose more to you and us. Ask in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the person who is still sick. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to God, to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Yeah. And it's like, we're going to trudge. Don't think there's no trudging. Trudge is not, like, for me, I'm thinking like there's mud and there's boots. It gets tough, but it also gets easier too, I think. And come give it a try. I think you owe it to yourself. If you're listening to this podcast and you haven't yet jumped in, you owe it to yourself to try. You won't lose anything. I can guarantee that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leila. This was a great RICO 12 weekly speaker meeting for all addicts and those wanting to learn more about addiction and the recovery therefrom. If we didn't get to your question, or if you have other questions, you can join us at rico12.com/forum and join in the community and ask questions, answer questions there. I invite the audience to come back next week. If you've not yet gone to rico12.com and submitted your email address to get in on these live invitations and meetings each week, please go do so there. You join us each Friday at noon Central Time, typically. Made a mistake this week. That's my fault. I own it. Next week, we're looking forward to our speaker then. Now, in order to listen to this in podcast form, search for RICO 12 Speaker Meeting Podcast on any podcast platform. That was a question that just came up there at the end. All right. Let's launch off the rest of our day with, how would you like to do that, Leila? How would you like to launch us off? What type of prayer would you like to do?
Yeah, I actually want to read a version of the St. Francis prayer, which it's actually was the first time I'd been to a meeting. I heard someone who had 50 years of sobriety speak on her 50th birthday on Zoom, and her name was Cece, and she had her own version she found during treatment in 1985. So I will read that version of the St. Francis prayer. God, make me an instrument of your healing. When I am weak and in pain, help me to rest. When I am anxious, help me to wait. When I'm fearful, help me to trust. When I'm lonely, help me to love. When I place you apart from me, help me to know you are near. Healing God, grant me so much to demand, everything from myself as to let others help me, nor to expect others to cure me, as to do my own part towards getting better. Grant me not so much to seek escape as to face myself and learn the depths of your love for me. For it is in being uncertain and not in control that we find true faith, in knowing the limits of mind and body that we find wholeness of spirit, and in passing through death that we find life that lasts forever.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leila. Keep coming back, everybody. It works when you work it. So work it. You are worth it.
You're worth it.